What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Trail Tales, episode number 64. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am your host. I am a thru hiker. I am a peak bagger. I am a huge hiking nerd, and every single week on this podcast, I chat with another thru hiker, another peak bagger, or another hiking nerd like myself. And this week's guest, she is definitely a thru hiker. She's definitely a peak bagger, and she is definitely a hiking nerd. Her name is Arlette Laan. She is an absolute legend in the White Mountains. If you hike in the Whites a lot, you've probably already heard of her, and if you haven't, wait till you hear about some of the stuff she's done. It's just insane. It's awesome, and I'm very thankful that I got to talk to her. So Arlette, when you hear this, thank you so much, and I would love to do another episode soon. Real quick, before we get into the conversation, I just gotta say a couple things. First of all, Instagram, at TrailTalesPod. Go follow the show on Instagram. And my personal Instagram, I always forget to plug this, but at Kyle Hates Hiking, the same name as my YouTube channel, which you should also go check out. Link to that in the show notes. Trail Tales on Facebook, go check that out. And TrailTalesPod.com, if this is your first time listening and you want to go listen to more, go to TrailTalesPod.com. I always forget to plug the website as well. Now, if you want to help support the show, if you listen every single week, there's a couple ways you can do that. First of all, 5-star iTunes reviews. A lot of you guys know I love the 5-star iTunes reviews, and I read them out loud during episode intros, which is what I'm going to do right now. Honestly, it's been so long now, I can't even remember the one I left off on, so I might have read this one already, but it's really short, so I'm just going to do it again, just to be sure. This one says, love this podcast, can relate to everyone. Well, whoever wrote that, you must have done a lot of hiking if you can relate to every single episode, but that's awesome. This next one says, one of the best hiking podcasts out there. That is awesome, I really appreciate that. Enjoy the podcast a lot. Crazy how much you improved as a host since the first episode. Well, definitely have improved a little bit, I would say. It would be great if you could do an episode on the Pemi Loop in the Whites, maybe bring back syntax for that episode. Keep it up, man. Thank you so much for that review. I would love to do an episode on the Pemi Loop. I would love to do a third episode with syntax as well, so maybe I'll have to make that happen. With that said, if you've left a 5-star iTunes review and that's just not enough support for you, you want to help support even more, there's another way you can do that, an even cooler way to support the show, and that is Patreon. Patreon.com/trailtales. Every month you'll get a bonus episode, a blooper reel, and access to a video chat with myself and some other hiking nerds just like yourself. We just started doing the video chats last month. It's honestly so much fun, and I'm already really stoked for this month's chat. Yeah, it's going to be great. Shout out to Kirk, who is my latest Patreon supporter. Please, guys, if you've listened this far into the introduction, if you're really this much of a hiking nerd, then at least consider it. Go poke around. $5 a month, not that much. The price of a very expensive coffee or the price of a very, very cheap Mountain House meal. So yeah, patreon.com/trailtales. With that said, let's do it. Let's get into the episode. I think I plugged everything there that I need to plug. Arlette Laan. I don't even know, like usually I'll say like Appalachian Trail class of or like whatever, but she's done so much stuff, I'm just going to say her name. Arlette Laan, White Mountain legend. That's better. Yeah, I like that. Let's do it. Arlette Laan, how's it going? Thanks so much for taking the time today. This is cool.
You're welcome. How's it going? It's going well.
It's going pretty good. We got a ton of snow last night here in Burlington, Vermont. Are you're over in
I'm in Lowell, Mass.
Okay. I knew it was somewhere over there. Did you guys get as much? I know it was supposed to be a little bit more like northwestern, I think, but yeah.
We just got kind of cruddy weather. We had lots of rain yesterday. But my husband's up in the mountains and he said it was snowing on him. So
nice.
Yeah, good stuff.
Nice. Well, this is going to be a fun episode. You are a very highly requested guest. I've had for like a couple months now, like people reaching out and saying that I should have you on the podcast. Mike recommended you, first of all. That's how I first heard of you. And then, like I said, I've had a number of people recommend you since then. A lot of people that listen to this show are White Mountain hikers. A lot of people frequent the Whites and live in, the New England area. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And it's honestly been a long time since I've talked about the Whites on this show. So I'm due, and I think you are the perfect guest for this because you've done some pretty crazy stuff in the Whites, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, just say, who you are, what you've hiked, all of that stuff.
What I've hiked? Okay.
Well, as much as you can fit into, I know you've done a lot.
All right. So, I'm Arlette, and I am originally from Holland and moved over to the States in '99. Have been there basically on and off So I've been here since '99. And started through hiking basically in 2002 with a shorter hike, the John Muir Trail, because I wanted to do the Pacific Crest Trail and wanted to figure out if I actually liked hiking for more than a couple days in a row. So did that in '02, and then I did the Pacific Crest Trail in '03, then I did the Continental Divide Trail in '04, then I did the Appalachian Trail in '05, and then I wandered around for a little bit and tried to figure out my life, never really got it together, and just kept through hiking. So there's a little list of long distance hikes. Arizona Trail, Grand Enchantment Trail, Florida Trail.
So casually, just, this trail.
Pinhoti, and there's all kinds of stuff. And so I met my husband in '07 when I was doing a section hike of the Pacific Crest Trail to prepare for the Pacific Northwest Trail. And he lived in Tingsboro, Mass. So that's how I ended up in Lowell, Mass, because I moved over here to be with him. And it's kind of funny because when I did the Appalachian Trail and hit the Whites, I did not like the Whites because they were so hard.
Interesting.
And when I had done, when you're on the PCT or the CDT and you hit like that, I did a northbound on the AT, so you're in good shape when you're in that however month, and on the PCT and the CDT, you're at that point you're doing big miles because you are in good shape and the trails were a little easier. And here you're supposed to be in good shape and do big miles, and you hit the Whites and you're suddenly like, okay, now I'm not doing easy 20s anymore. I'm down to 15s and I'm tired and this is hard. I don't like this. So it's kind of funny that now I spend so much time hiking in the Whites.
No,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's kind of interesting that you didn't, it makes sense that you didn't like being slowed down by the Whites, but from my experience, having hiked the AT as well, and just from talking to other people who have through hiked the AT, it seems like the Whites are, generally speaking, the favorite section of the trail. So I just think that's kind of an interesting perspective. And of course it's kind of funny how it came full circle. Your first time there, you weren't super crazy about it, and then as we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, now you're just freaking crushing it there. So I think that's so funny.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I was just tired too, I did that was my third year of doing a through hike, and I think I was just a little worn out. Because, obviously the views were amazing, and I obviously did appreciate that. It was just I just wanted easy walking, and it wasn't easy.
Yep.
So it's interesting to look back and now, I'm a better hiker now in the Whites than I was when I was a through hiker. You're more, you get used to the rocks, so you're more nimble, and it's very interesting. It's a different type of hiking. Definitely.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to have you elaborate a little bit more on why you've kind of came back to the Whites. So I get the moving to be with your husband thing. Is that the sole reason that you're still here, or that you came here? Because just, you've hiked so much in so many different places. I'm curious to hear if there's anything more, any other reason why you were drawn back to the Whites specifically over all these other areas that you've hiked in.
Well, it is because we both have our businesses here, so we can't really move. But there is also, just to keep it interesting, there's so many different things that you can do to keep it interesting, like with the, doing the redlining and stuff. So it's somebody asked me that before in a job interview. It's like, don't you get like bored with the whites? And I'm like, no, because like with the redlining, there's so many different places in the whites to explore that you can kind of pick and choose what kind of experience you want to have.
Yeah.
And then like with like this last summer, like you can come up with projects that push you and that give you a whole nother, experience again, like, let's do it. Let's do the Direttissima. Let's try to do all the peaks in 9 days with all your food, and let's make it a hard challenge.
So crazy.
And, so that keeps it interesting for me. And again, with the redlining too, like I've been discovering so many, corners of the whites that are quiet and wild and different and really pretty. So even though I love like West Coast trails where you can actually walk versus scramble, it is still interesting enough for me to still enjoy it. I just pick and choose what I feel like for that day. Do I want to do peaks and ridges, or do I want to go and explore something new? So I still enjoy it.
Definitely makes sense. Why don't you elaborate a little bit more on what you've done, like in the whites specifically? Because I know about the Direttissimas or deer. I don't even know. It's such a weird word, but pronunciation.
I don't know.
But I know about those. I want to hear. We're gonna talk about those in just a second. But yeah, what else? What's your I feel like such a douche, but saying this, but what's your White Mountain specific resume, which is crazy.
Well, so I guess I started with the 48. When I was never a peak bagger, so I wasn't all that interested in like, the 48, like whatever. I was one of those like, whatever, lists and peak bagging, whatever. I'm a long distance hiker. But it's kind of like now that I'm doing some, it's kind of fun, it gives you a little goal, and it's kind of fun to tick them off. And I usually like to finish or start lists when I'm already like a long ways into them, so it's not like this big daunting task. It's I've already done this many peaks, might as well do these other ones. So I did the 48 over a few years, and when I figured out that I had a few peaks left, I looked at the maps like, how can I make this into like a section hike kind of thing, or like so at one point, I think in June a couple of years ago, I did I just made like up this weird route to connect all the peaks that I still needed.
Yep.
So that was kind of fun. Like I made it into a backpacking trip because I do like backpacking better than day hiking, except for winter. But we'll get into that later.
Oh yeah. Stoked.
So did that. Then I did the 67 because we hiked the long trail and we picked up some peaks while we were doing the long trail, and picked up some of the 100 highest peaks while we were doing the long trail. So, and then my husband wanted to finish his winter 100 highest. So I went with him for several peaks and picked up a few peaks that way. And so then it was one of those like, well, might as well do the other peaks too. So I finished the 100 highest. Then last year we did a single season winter 48 because I said I was never going to do the winter 48 because winter just wasn't my thing, and it's so hard and so cold. But my husband really loves winter hiking, so I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna do it, might as well just do them all in one season so I get it over with as quickly as possible.
That's so funny.
Doesn't make any sense. So that's what we did last winter. We started in December, and then we went to Europe for 2 months, and then we finished most of them all in March, to make it easy. So I think that's and then I'm doing the redlining, which I looked it up, but I'm at 76% for the redlining.
Damn.
Yeah, and then randomly the gridding, but I don't think I'll finish that. I'm like halfway for the gridding. But I have all the crappy months left, like, April and May and February, and I don't know. I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? That's right. And then, of course, the Diartissimas.
Yep.
You've done, how many, have you done 2, more than 2?
I guess if you count the winter one, 3.
3? Okay, which is insane. I mean, first of all, you probably know this better than I would, obviously, better than I would. There's only a handful of people that have even, like, done Diartissimas, right? Like, the number's not that high. Do you know what the number is off the top of your head?
I don't know. Is it just, like, is it 13? I'm not
I feel
sure.
like it's, like, low teens or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. And you've done it 3 times. To your knowledge, is there anybody who's ever done it more than 3 times?
No.
Which is awesome.
I don't think so. Just Rich and I.
Yeah, which is so cool. And then the winter one you just finished pretty recently, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I kind of want to like get into that. Actually no, let's go. Okay, so let's go through the other 2 before the winter one first of all. Uh-huh. So can you just kind of talk about those a little bit? What were you were obviously experienced in the whites going into it, so you knew the peaks and the trails and stuff, but tackling them all at once is like a whole different beast. So I'm trying to come up with like a specific question, but I almost just want to hear hear what you have to say about like the first 2 times before like the weather was cold.
Yeah. Well, the first one, I actually wasn't all that experienced in the whites yet, and I hadn't hiked all of the trails that were part of the route. And I actually hadn't completed my 48 yet. But I had read about a couple that had attempted it, and they had failed. And then I read some about it. It's like, oh, that sounds like an interesting thing to do. Mm-hmm. And you only have to average like 25 miles a day to do it in 10 days. And
only 25 miles a day.
Yeah. That's what I thought, right? And that totally came back to haunt me because 25 miles in the whites on that itinerary is really challenging.
Oh yeah, big time.
So yeah, that totally was like I was totally underestimating the whole project. And I had just gone to the Sierra, so I was in decent shape. And because I'm not really a good climber at all, I'm really slow on the uphills. But usually when I did a section of the John Muir Trail and I pushed myself, so I was in decent shape. So I set out and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it in 10 days, no problem. But I wasn't as experienced yet. So like on day 2 or 3, whatever, there was like, I was on Franconia Ridge and it was like super foggy. And I'm like, I didn't feel safe to keep going. So I did a shorter day and then you're behind. And I'm like, all right, I took wrong turns.
So were you going for the record on this first attempt?
The first attempt, so I guess Matt's Rowing had done a write-up, and he had done it in 10 days, or maybe over 10 days, so I wanted to do it in 10 days, and I wasn't really I did want to beat that time, because I thought that I could do that.
Yep.
But I wasn't really concerned with, like, fastest known times or whatever. It was just kind of a challenge for myself. Sure.
I gotcha.
And I wanted to see if I had like willpower, because I have Anish as one of my friends, and I read about Jennifer Davis's AT thing, and I was like, oh, these women, they have so much grit, like they dig so deep. I wonder if I have that in me, but like I know I'm not fast, so it doesn't make any sense for me to try any of those big things. So it was like, oh, just as a little for myself, like, do I have that in me?
Yeah.
And so this trip definitely had me dig deep. And I was very bummed out that I did not make it into 10 days. It took me almost 12 days. But yeah, I took a couple of wrong turns, had to backtrack because I didn't know the trails all that well. So that was very interesting. And, but it's one of those things that you're like, well, I set out to do it in 10 days and I didn't do it. And, everybody
12 days is still pretty fucking impressive. Like,
and it was still really hard. And I mean, like, I was really, really exhausted. So I tried again a couple years later And but I wasn't in good enough shape to keep going. Like, I was kind of nauseous on the uphills because I was just pushing too hard. And I remembered very well how hard it was. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do this again. So I bailed like on day 3 or something. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do this again. But then this summer, I guess, well, and then with Philip was doing some, and so there's a little bit more like, people were starting to get into it, and then there was some other women that were starting to get into it, and I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should try to set a harder time to beat. You know, like, oh, well, they can beat me easily with the 12 days. But I know I can do it faster, because I knew where I'd screwed up in the first time, and I'm lighter weight now with my gear, and I knew that I wasn't gonna cook. Like, the first time I tried to cook, I'm like, there's no time to cook if you want to set a good time. So I'd learned a bunch, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try for 10 days this time, and I'm at least make it harder for other people to beat me, basically. So that was this summer. And we had and my husband had done one, because we had just gone to the Pacific Northwest to finish the Pacific Northwest Trail, so we were in decent shape. And we flew back, and he set out on to do one, and he did it in 9 days and something. And then I was
that's so crazy.
So then I was like, all right, well, he's like, well, the weather looks good now, you should go and try it. I'm like, okay. So I got my gear together, and I did it again, and I surprised myself by doing it under 9 days, because I didn't think I could do that with my uphill speed.
So incredible.
So, but yeah, it was interesting.
Definitely.
It was interesting.
That's such I love how you just sum all of that, like, incredible stuff up into, yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. That's so good. That's so good. So I kind of want to, like, take a step aside from your diretisma experiences for just a second. This is a question that I actually was going to ask Philip way back when he was on the show a couple times, but we just didn't have time for it. What is, like, the rough, like, I mean, you're not going to describe every single trail, obviously, but, like, the rough, like, route people take for the diretism? Actually, first of all, is there, like, just one route that pretty much everybody does? Like, is there some leeway? Like, have people done it in different ways? Because my understanding is it's just hitting all of the peaks in one shot. So I guess I could see maybe, you know, people taking slightly different routes. Is that a thing? Yeah.
There's definitely different ways of doing it. There are a lot of similarities, but well, first of all, a lot of people either start at MISCELLANEOUS or they start at Cabot. So, you know, you can choose your direction. Yep. Then like, I know that Andrew Drummond did his with a lot more out and backs, because he'd done one. But he's a trail runner, so he tried to do as many out and backs as possible, like drop the big pack and then run up the peak. So that's an option. There is an option to include more or less bushwhacks, like you can bushwhack down Owl's Head. I think Lincoln Slide is one. I've never done that. So there's some options with that as well. And I know, like, Bill Tidd, who actually has the fastest known time for the men, he did a whole different thing. But he doesn't call his a direttissima, but it is the fastest way unsupported to get all the 48. Okay. And I think he started at Passaconaway, and then he road walked from, I believe, Greeley Pond Trailhead all the way to Waterville.
Wow.
No, not Waterville. To the Moose.
Okay, I was gonna say he must have been like road walking on the interstate then.
No. So yeah, from Greeley Ponds to Moose, and then did Moose, and then he bushwhacked from the Hancocks to Carrigan, which sounded gnarly. And so he did a ton of research. It's like, it was interesting to read his like longer trip report. And that to me didn't make. I mean, he did an analysis of what would be the fastest, and for me it was more like I like to make it in a cleanest way, most direct backpacking way, with as little out and back as possible. The out and backs are nice when, if they're in there, there's like Bill Tidd didn't want to drop his pack anywhere. I believe like for the little out and backs, you can drop your pack. I mean, that's to me still unsupported. But for the route, I wanted to actually do as little out and back as possible, because for me with the speed, it doesn't even make that much difference, because I'm just not that fast. I am on the downhill, I won't lie. I'm on the downhill, I can be pretty fast, but on the up, it doesn't really matter all that much. And my backpack, towards the latter half was so light that it really didn't matter all that much. Yeah. But so that's really the main variances is, do you include bushwhacks, and do you start at Cabot, or do you start at Moose Lodge?
I gotcha. And then how about, for your 3 different dietitians, that's going to trip me up this whole episode. Did you have any variance in your route for each one, or did you have the same route all 3 times?
So the winter one was definitely very different. The summer ones, I wanted to include a bushwhack in it on the second one, but I hadn't done that bushwhack down Owl's Head before, and I happened to be there in the dark, so I'm like, you know what, I'll just stick with the trail. Because bushwhacking a new route in the dark, not so exciting. I mean, maybe too exciting. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Nah, I'll just stick with the. So I think I basically did the same thing except for the road walk in the end. Mm-hmm. Because I took a longer route the first time because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. So I whatever. So I found out the fastest way to do it on the second one.
Which one did you start with? Like, what direction-ish did you go?
I started both on Moose and ended on Cabot.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Damn, that's so crazy. Like, I would like to do a dietissima one of these days. Probably not go for like the record or anything like that. I'd probably freaking die, but just to kind of tie them all together, because I've done the 48 and I've done a decent amount of just like other trails besides just the 4,000 footers and stuff, and I think it would just be cool to kind of tie it all together like that.
No, it's fun, and you get really kind of more of an idea of the lay of the land. When you just do your single peaks, you don't always know, like, oh, where's that peak, but if you connect them all on foot, that kind of, puts that more into your memories. Like, oh, this is where that one is, and this is where that one is. And you get to experience some of the lesser known trails too, like Shoal Pond Trail, or maybe that is, I don't know. That, to me, I hadn't hiked that before, so that was kind of fun. So it's that, and Sawyer Pond Trail, and it's kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, it would be more fun if you do it, either self-supported, where you don't carry all that food, or take maybe like 2.5 weeks or something.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way I would do it. I would do it a little bit more casually. It's like, what, 200 and change miles?
Yeah, I think 250.
Okay, that's more than... that's like close to the distance of the long trail, honestly. Damn, so yeah. Probably like a 2.5 to 3, maybe, like 2.5 week thing would be cool. And maybe work in a couple resupplies in there somehow. It's a town day or something. I don't know. I'm taking a little bit more like a through hike almost than like an FKT.
Yeah. And that would be, then it would be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And then
it would be fun, yeah.
You can sleep every night for as long as you want and stuff.
And
so
play with my camera and take photos and stuff.
Yeah.
So, take me back to the second summer one where you set the record. Just to be clear, I think you probably mentioned this earlier. I think I missed it. Was that the overall self-supported record?
No, it's the women's unsupported.
Unsupported, and again, I'm not super up with the FKTs and stuff. So unsupported, self-supported. I think I kind of know the difference, but maybe a little bit of clarification there would be good.
Yeah. So unsupported is you carry everything that you need with you from beginning to start. And so no resupply, no trail magic is accepted. You can't have people hike with you that you arrange ahead of time. I actually didn't meet anybody on the trail that hiked with me at all. But I've randomly, met somebody that wouldn't have been a problem, I guess. But you can't prearrange anything.
Gotcha.
And you just, all of your gear and food. you carry with you from beginning to start.
And then self-supported would be if you like had food caches or you like went into town, things like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's what we did on the winter one because we couldn't carry like 4 weeks of food with us. on top of the gear. We would have died.
I can imagine.
Imagine. So that's the difference. Yeah.
So on that second diatissima, so you pretty much like blew your other one like out of the water. Can you just kind of like tell me that story like a little bit more in depth? Because you went through the first one and what you would have done differently and things like that. But I kind of want to hear what it was like to actually like set that record and like crush your time like that.
It was exhausting.
I think that goes without saying.
So I knew I was kind of looking at my husband's schedule for like the 9 days and stuff. So at first I was a little behind him and I'm like, but I was like, I need to let that go. I can't beat his time, whatever. I just tried to, sleep enough that I wouldn't, and especially the first couple days, like try to sleep enough and eat enough and not like kill myself in the first couple days because the backpack is heavier and you're just starting. And then I felt pretty strong and just towards like the end of it, like the backpack's lighter and I still felt pretty strong. It was really the sleeping because then I started to cut down on my sleeping. I'm like, all right, let's push it. And like every night I would just kind of hike until it didn't make sense for me to keep walking because I was going so slow that it would make sense for me to just go to sleep and then wake up, with more energy and like,
That's
when you walk
literally like walking yourself like to the point of exhaustion like that. That's
kinda,
so crazy.
Yeah. It's like, all right, now I'm walking on the flats, like I'm walking like a mile an hour or something. And you're like, okay, this is not efficient. Like it's better for me to just go to sleep. And then to keep going. And then towards the end, when I realized I could do it under 9 days, I just kept going. But then like, it was like my body was fine. It was really, I needed sleep. So it was hard for me to keep my eyes open. And when you get tired and you start like rubbing your eyes, that's what I was doing a lot. And I'm like, okay, I really need to sleep. So I would take like little cat naps, like, 10 minutes or something. And then I'd feel a little bit better and I'd keep going. And then, I hit the really bad weather on the, presidentials. And I was like, all right, I gotta keep going. And there was really no place to really sleep. And I'm like, all right, I can't stop now. I want to make it under the 9 days. So, but I also didn't want to be stupid. So, I did keep going because I knew like this was the difference between the first and the second time that I had the knowledge of the trails that I was on. Yeah. And even though it was completely socked in and it was dark and it was gusting, I still kind of knew where I was going.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I know this trail. I know it's not gonna I'm not gonna get to a steep drop off. And I did use the Gut Hook app to keep me kind of in the right direction for like a little section near just below Madison. Yep. And I just kept checking that I wasn't doing anything dangerous. So there was that push to keep going and the lack of sleep. I was much more efficient with like eating and all that stuff. And then both times the Kilkenny Ridge Trail just killed me. But the last time I was so sleep deprived at that point that, I was walking and I just wanted to sit down and sleep. And I was like, no, I got to eat something. So, but then every time I ate something, I stopped and I wanted to sit down and close my eyes. And I'm like, all right, I'll close my eyes for just a few seconds. Oh, no. Now I got to keep going. All right. Well, okay. Well, keep going. So, and then it's like, now I got to eat something and stop for a little bit. All right. No, got to keep going. Can't sit down. And then my light was dying and it was just like I was going so slow. But I'm like, I couldn't sleep because I wouldn't make it under the 9 days. So
Yeah.
it's just like, it was really like a quarter mile seemed like an eternity to me. It's like, I can't make it. I can't go another quarter mile. I can't do it. No, and then you still get up. It's like, it's very interesting how you just still keep going when that willpower is there, I guess. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh no, just keep going. But I don't want to. No, you keep going. Can't sleep now. So that it was, and I guess like my lights were dying towards the end, so that was interesting.
That's gonna need those.
Yeah, well, I think I wrote that in my write-up too. It was like I ended up using my phone as my flashlight. It's like a highlight of my hiking career. Yep, you're that person that's using your phone as your light. So, so that was pretty funny.
What were the reactions from other hikers like that were kind of passing you? Because obviously, most of them didn't know what you were doing. Like, and I'm just trying to picture like from your description the state that you were in, especially towards the end there. Like, you must have gotten some bizarre looks, or maybe even a couple like should we help this poor lady? when I went up Wambach, it was actually during the day. And it was super warm, but I was a little later in the day, and it was actually pretty busy. So a lot of people were coming down, and they were like, "Oh, you're almost there. You can make it. It's not that far anymore. You'll be all right." And you're like, "You have no idea."
You have no idea, indeed. So, and I'm also like, I just have my sports bra and my tattered shorts on because it's so hot. And it was really funny to be, "Oh, you'll be okay. You're almost there." But I didn't look so good. No.
And then how about when you finally finished that first time you got back down to the car and got back home and were able to like get some sleep and some real food and stuff? Like, this is such like I feel like this is such like a generic question, but like I just gotta ask, like, after putting yourself through hell like that for so many days, like what was it like when you finally finished and accomplished that goal?
I felt really proud of myself. And I mean, I was sleep deprived. My body wasn't hurting as much as the first time. The first time, like, I couldn't even sleep because my legs were just so in pain.
Wow.
It was really, I've never had that since, that was very interesting. I felt extremely strong and proud of myself. So that was very cool. Like, I accomplished what I'd set out and I beat my own expectations. That was,
right.
It was
True.
Yeah. So that was very, very cool. I basically was out of it for a few days, and like I had blisters, because that last day it had been so hot, and then there's that road walk from Jefferson to Wambach. So it's hot and it's a road walk. So that's never a good recipe, for for your feet. So I started to get blisters, and I actually got blisters on my hands from my trekking poles. So all that, and my feet were swollen, so they were really tender after I was done. I was kind of hobbling around in that way. Otherwise, like, my body was fine, but definitely swollen feet. I mentally, I felt really, it was very cool. I was very happy with it, and I felt very proud of that, that I had done it. So that was very neat. And, it would be kind of nice to always have that, feeling, but unfortunately that kind of fades.
Of course, yeah. Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah. So I was super stoked. I was very excited.
And how about, like, when you finished, did you know that you were going to eventually end up doing a third one too? Was that on the horizon yet, or was that just like completely not a possibility whatsoever?
No, I hadn't really. I was like, never ever again. I also said never again because I knew that I like, maybe like if weather had been even more ideal, like I hit some weather, but it wasn't that crazy, like maybe I could shave off a half a day.
Oh my God, it never ends.
I'm not going there. I know, like, I can't really, with my abilities, I can't really go that much faster. So I don't see the use of doing it again for me in summer, because I don't think there's a lot of room for improvement. So I was like, nah, never again. And like, my husband and I, we've been trying to figure out how we came up with this winter one idea, and why.
So that's kind of where I was going next. I was going to say, like, why did you want to do the camp in the winter? Like, how did that come about, you know?
I think we were, I think it might have started because people were like, oh, we should do one together, because he went out and did another one and then beat my time by not that much, really.
According to you.
No, like, he's so much faster. So he still wants to go back out because he still knows he can go faster. But he did go under, I don't know, several hours faster than what I did. Mm-hmm. And I think people were like, oh, you should do one together. And we're like, no, our paces are so different and our hiking styles are so different. Like, it wouldn't make any sense for, like, a time, you know, for a fastest known time. And and it wouldn't really be a whole lot of fun for us, because we would be so far apart, in pace. And,
right.
And I think maybe he came up with the idea that we could do a winter one, and, like, it had never been done before, and we're both long distance hikers, and we have done camping in cool temperatures. We hadn't done a lot of camping with actual snow on the ground all that much. Mm-hmm. And it'd be an adventure, and we could, you know, it was a challenge. Like, could we do it? Is it possible? I don't know. So then that kind of, like, became an idea, and then we were like, let's look at, like, how would we do it? And, we're like, well, it would, this was the joke that he kept saying to me, like, oh, well, it became a joke on the hike. We would only hike from 9 to 5, and we'd only do 10-mile days. It won't be as hard as the single season winter one that we did, where we were we were low on time and had to do really long days. Mm-hmm. And we, you know, like, every night we would come out, like, well, winter hiking, you always come out with a headlamp, well, most of the time. But, you know, it wouldn't be like where I'd get back, you know, in camp, like, and pushing myself every day. It would be much easier that way. Yeah. That wasn't true. But that's what he said, you know, easy, 9 to 5 days, easy. So we came up with a plan, and we're like, well, so if we do 10 miles a day, how long is it going to take us? And so we figured somewhere between, I guess, 20 to 30 days is what we thought, I think. And, we're like, all right, so we'll do it self-supported, and we'll, do some resupplies along the way, because once we figured out how heavy our packs were going to be with all of the gear, we were like, we don't want to carry more than 4 days of food. It's gonna break our backs. It's gonna be too much. Mm-hmm. So we kind of divvied it up in, like, you know, 3 to 4 day segments. And then once we figured out that we wanted to do it, we also came up with a different route, because he figured, you need a good weather forecast for the, presidentials. And you can't predict that very far.
I was gonna ask you that next, actually, how you would deal with that, you know, during the winter.
Yeah. So he was like, well, once we have a good weather forecast for the presidentials, we're gonna go and we'll start with that. And we got lucky that December 22nd the weather was decent, but it wasn't like we needed kind of like 2 days in a row for the presidentials, because we wanted to include isolation with it. Mm-hmm. So we were at Crawford Notch, and we're like, it doesn't look good enough for 2 days in a row. Let's do Tom Field and Willie right here, you know, because we're right here, and that's the same trailhead. So that we did that as a day hike, and camped, you know, that day, and then we went up and did the Southern Prezzies the next day, including isolation, and then it was very windy in the afternoon, so we made it off the ridge, like, just in time. Got a little sketchy for a little bit there. And then we had to wait in our tent the next day, the entire day, because it was too windy.
Wow.
But we took extra food, because we were like, it might take us a little extra because of the forecast. And then the next day, on Christmas Day, we did the Northern Prezzies in Washington. But that was, he's like, we got to start with the presidentials because you can't predict that. And otherwise you might end up having to wait a week, for a weather window on the Prezzies. So that's why we changed up the route, for that.
So it's almost like you guys were kind of hopping around a little bit more for this one.
We basically did a circle, I guess. We did 2 circles or something. I don't know.
But the whole time you were still on foot. You didn't.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. We just we did the Prezzies and then the Wildcats, and then we had skis. We had stashed skis near Gorham, and then skied up to Jefferson and Jefferson Town. So we did Wambach and Cabot that way, and then we skied over to Crawford, and then we did the rest of it. So that first thing was like a circle, basically loop thing.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So how much time did it end up taking you, the winter one?
I think it's 29 days and 4 hours, something like that. So
let me ask you this. What was more challenging, setting the time record during the summer or, no time record, but just doing it during like the winter, I guess, if that makes sense?
The winter one I think was harder, because we, spent 22 nights camping in a tent in winter. And we spent a few nights we had in a shelter, and then I think one night in a motel. And we also were out for 2 weeks without a day off.
Damn.
So we had a few shorter days in there because of weather. But towards the end we just wanted to be done.
Yeah.
We had one night where it had snowed on us a ton, and towards the end, so which makes it actually snows a good insulator. So we were really warm that night, which meant that there was a lot of condensation going on in the tent, and then our sleeping bags got quite damp. And then we had 2 more nights to go after that, and we're setting up our tent, and our bags are slightly damp, and they're down, so they're not as warm as they should be, and it got a bit colder. So the last 2 nights, we weren't cold, but we could feel a little bit of chill, and we'd also started to get up earlier to try to beat the winds, and so the 9 to 5 story definitely wasn't happening. It's like, oh, let's get up at 3 so we can start at 4 in another snowstorm in the dark, going uphill with the full backpack on, and negotiate this frozen waterfall thing next to on the Garfield Ridge with your ice axe, and yay! Towards the end, we're like, okay, we're ready for something else now. But we were super stoked that we were actually able to complete it. Which, we weren't, I wasn't sure. You've got the weather. We got...
Right. You have to have a little bit of luck in that regard to be able to complete something like this.
Yeah, so it hadn't been all that cold. We had a ton of, gray days, which wasn't all that, uplifting. You're like, oh, it's snowing again. Yay. Yeah. I think Rich said, my husband, that we had snow about 65% of the time.
Damn. It was actively snowing on you, wow.
Yeah. So that gets old pretty quick. So that was a little, not so, uplifting. But it was never, only the last few days it got really cold. So we were pretty lucky. We actually, we had one day that it was spring-like temperatures, and which was good and not good. At least it was raining at some point when we went up to the Hancocks, and so we got wet, but it was warm enough. So at least we were just wearing our base layers with our rain gear, so it was okay, I guess. Yeah. It was just miserable. And then a lot of we did have to change our route, because of the rain and the warm temperatures. It was melting the snow, so some of the rivers, the water was rising. So after the Hancocks, we had planned to do Owl's Head, But we're like, there's no way we're going to be able to ford that stream right now, and the snow bridge is probably melted out. So we had to change that out and changed our route, and then ended up doing it from the backside, from 13 Falls. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but like crawling into a frozen tent with semi-frozen sleeping bags, and I didn't know that a self-inflatable sleeping pad could freeze, but it can. It was very interesting. Yeah.
That's so incredible. Like,
yeah,
I kind of thought you were gonna say that was the harder one, but I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. You never know. They're both really freaking difficult. Obviously, like that blows my mind. Honestly, I cannot even imagine dealing with. I mean, I can't imagine doing either one, but it's easier for me to imagine the summer one, even at a fast pace like that, because it's just like gritting your teeth, right? But like,
yeah,
oh man, to be dealing with the temperatures and the weather like that for that many days, like that's incredible. How often were you guys, because you said it was snowing a lot, how often were you guys like actively breaking trail versus hiking on some trail that had been like packed down previously?
I haven't really looked at that, but there was always sections of trail, like, because you do go, because you're doing all these traverses. So there's always like a section of trail in a day that's not broken out. Like the sleepers had been previously traveled, but we still had to break trail even though it wasn't snowing that day. Like from Middle Carter to Imp Trail, that was a really hard one. Not the Imp Trail, to the Imp Shelter. There was a ton of snow to break through, and that snow drifts and all that. So I don't really know the percentage, but there was quite a bit of it. Like every single day, there was some of it that hadn't been broken, or we're out there and we're, and like Tecumseh, like, you go up and that trail's broken out, but you go down to the other side to Tripoli Road and nobody hikes that section. So that's breaking, and then going up the Osceolas from the backside, nobody hikes that. So there was, I think every day we had a section that wasn't broken.
So incredible. What about I know you said the temperatures weren't too bad until the end, I think I heard there, but what was like the coldest temperature you guys saw at night while you were trying to sleep?
Oh, I don't know. I'm really bad with that stuff.
You wouldn't be like sitting out there with a freaking thermometer, but
Rich actually brought a thermometer, like a little guy with him, and after seeing that, like for 3 nights in a row, it was 20 degrees at night. He's like, "Oh, it's broken." So that didn't work anymore.
Damn.
So it was. I think the last couple nights it was colder than that. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So, but we did a disastrous practice hike in early December where we realized, no, the 3 season tent was not going to work. And, if you're breaking trail, after a deep snow, it's going to be a lot slower. There's some other stuff that we were like, oh, okay, we gotta change some things. We bought a 4 season tent, so we were we were well prepared for that, and we had our really warm sleeping bags. So we did have all the gear to keep us warm at night. We were never cold, and Rich was really sweet. He made me a hot water bottle for my sleeping bag every night, and so we were comfortable at night.
I gotcha. Yeah. That's good to hear. I haven't really ever hiked in the White Star in the winter. I'm not too much of a winter hiker, but
me neither.
Well, you say that. Maybe you don't like it as much, but I would say that you are solidly a winter hiker, purely based off of this experience. So that's so incredible. What was it like experiencing trails that you were so familiar with in like such a different setting like this, I guess? So I know you've done some stuff in the winter before, but like, just doing them all at once for that many days straight is obviously something very unique. And I'm just kind of curious what it's like going back and doing this stuff that you're familiar with in such a different setting. Yeah.
It's really, it's kind of fun. Actually, like, last winter, there was so much snow in March that, like, we got, so that's when we did the single season one, but just as day hikes. And that one was really cool where we had views where we normally don't have views, like from Zealand, like the summit sign of Zealand was below a snowdrift.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I think last year, that winter was actually more impactful with seeing how different it was. And then this year, like, some of the comparing that to last year's winter conditions,
Sure.
Was very interesting that some of it was harder and some of it was a lot easier. Like going, and then comparing it to our disastrous, little prep hike where we were going like a quarter mile an hour up to Garfield from Skookumchuck direction because nobody had broken a trail. It had dumped on us and we were like, holy crap, we might not be able to do this if it's like this.
Yeah.
But then the actual winter season starts and then people are actually hiking, for their grid or their winter 48 or whatever. So more trails were broken out at that point. But I was always like, the grid, I don't understand why people are doing that. But it is interesting to compare the differences per winter even, like,
Yeah.
Like you'll have views where you normally don't have views, which is very cool. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
See, again, not much of a winter hiker, so I didn't even think about comparing winter to winter, but that's pretty cool. You're kind of getting me thinking here, so
yeah,
that's
like
awesome.
in March last year, like we had an amazing view all the way over to Carter's, like Carter Dome. We could see the presidentials. It was amazing.
Wow.
And like normally from Carter Dome, you have no view, or you have like the little view, but there's not much there. And like
for White Mountain standards, yeah.
Yeah. So that was it really changes your views and stuff. So that's cool. Ladders under ice or snow. That's quite interesting sometimes. Like iced over ladders. And then you get whacked in the face a lot more, especially like that was the last winter. Where with the tall snow banks, it feels like bushwhacking. We started wearing safety goggles last year because we just got whacked in the face all the time. And then this year it wasn't so bad, but also it was a lot earlier in the year. So who knows what March is going to look like this year?
Yeah, you never know, especially after all this freaking snow we just got.
Yeah.
I think we should do a story now. So we're kind of at the end of the episode. This flew by, like always. These always fly by. I don't know why I'm surprised. Like I shouldn't be surprised. Yeah. So I kind of gave you a half-assed heads up before we started recording. I forgot to give you an actual heads up, so I apologize for that. But through all the thousands of miles that you've hiked, I'm hoping there's a story that you can come up with here and share with everybody now that we're at the end of the episode. Is that doable? Is that doable? Did you have a chance?
Just a hiking story or just a funny thing that happened or?
So the way I always like put it to people is, let's say you're sitting at like a bar or like around a campfire with someone who's not a very experienced hiker and they say, what's like your best or craziest story that's ever happened to you, whatever like that go-to story would be, or one of those go-to stories if you have more than one. That's what I'm kind of looking for, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And you can take a second because again, I forgot.
yeah, no worries. I don't know, I think like we could do a funny story.
Yeah, sure.
Or how my husband and I met.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Yes, let's hear that one.
So I'm hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail in 2007 as a preparation for my Pacific Northwest Trail. And I get to Tuolumne Meadows, which was my endpoint, and I'm planning on hitchhiking to Glacier National Park and to start the Pacific Northwest Trail in Glacier. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be that my Greenleaf, my now husband, Rich, he was hiking the PCT and he got bored because he was going too fast and he got in the head and he was already in Tahoe because he had skipped some of the Sierra at that point. No, some of the desert. And so he had rented a car in Tahoe and had driven back to Yosemite to just hang out with some friends, kill some time, and give friends some time to catch up to him and then hike with them again. So he's got a rental car, and I need a ride. And we'd never met before, but like, oh, he's a hiker. I asked some other hikers, can I trust him? And they're like, oh yeah, he's good as gold. and yeah, so I'm at this picnic table, and he's like, well, I guess I could give you a ride. And so he gave me a ride all the way to Glacier, and we had a lot of fun. And then we stayed in touch, and we both quit our hikes. And he was on the phone, pay phones at that point still. And he's like, oh, when are you going to come home? I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh. And so I quit, and I went and I ended up in Tingsboro, Mass. And so now we always joke about how he picked me up on the side of the road. And yeah, like I would, yeah. So anyways.
That's
There's
awesome.
A short story.
That's awesome. I just put out a video on my YouTube channel talking about hitchhiking. And, as I'm sure you know, the perception is that it's super dangerous and all this stuff, which, I mean, is fair if you're not a experienced hiker and stuff. But I just think I kind of wish I had done this interview before I made the video, so I could have included, like, maybe you'll even meet your future spouse. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's funny.
It's possible.
It's definitely possible. Well, this was super fun. Again, it's great to hear about the Whites. It's been a while, and I'm sure a lot of people were looking forward to that. And, I mean, your story is so incredible. There's very few people, as you know, that have done what you've done, not just in the Whites, but just anywhere, like hiking-wise. Like, it's absolutely incredible. So this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That was fun.
Let's do it again soon. And with that said, I think that's going to do it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good one.